So he took the Kentucky long rifle off of their mantle, handed it to John, who's taller than he was, said, "Go out, find us something to eat." So young John, he ventured along these ridges. He was looking for things to eat. Probably saw some wild turkey wandering around, maybe even some white-tailed deer wandering around, even the elusive gray squirrel wandering around. But none of those things would really satisfy him because he probably didn't want to have to come back anytime soon to find more food. So he did eventually find something that would last his family a while. Something that we have been seeing roaming this area for around almost 100 years now. Any guesses what that could be?
Buffalo. Bear.
Buffalo, a bear, yeah, black bear. Black bear roaming on the hillside. So he took his long rifle, he aimed at that bear, shot it, boom, this puff of smoke. And when that puff of smoke dissipated, that bear was nowhere in sight. But he did see a blood trail going down into this sinkhole behind me here. And that young, brave, smart boy, do you know what he did next? He followed it. He followed this massive wounded animal into this deep, dark hole in the ground. His mother would have been so proud of him. Before we follow in John Houchin's footsteps, we've got a couple more safety things to go over. Covered some up at the shelter, but we've got a few more now. So we're going to make sure that we're going to stay on the trail the whole time we're in the cave today. That's going to be the best safe place for us to be. It's going to be pretty obvious where the trail is, but when we get onto that dirt trail, you'll see it's lined with rocks. Sometimes there are gaps in that rock. Fill that gap with your imagination. Stay within those rock lines. We want to make sure we're also not climbing on any of the rocks or the railings in the cave. Don't sit on the rocks or the railings. There are some benches if you do need to take a break and sit down on those. Has anyone ever felt or touched a cave before? You know how different it feels? It doesn't feel different at all. It feels like any other kind of rock. So if you have that urge, you really want to feel the cave, touch any of the rocks out here on the surface because it's the same thing. But when we touch it in the cave, we're leaving behind some natural oils that we have in our hands that can darken the cave walls. It can wipe away things like historic graffiti that we have in the cave. Sometimes you might reach out, run your hands on the ceiling, and feel a fuzzy rock too. We don't have any fuzzy rocks though. Those are called bats. And bats can carry a disease that you don't want to be dealing with. So we're going to make sure we keep our hands to ourselves while we're in the cave today. We're not going to touch, write, or mark on any of the cave surfaces. Now if you're taking pictures today, you're 100% allowed to, but make sure you have your flash turned off. We're about to enter a dimly lit environment, kind of like a movie theater. So we have that bright light going off that can damage our night vision that we'll be getting. Can also help arise a lot of different health issues in some of your fellow visitors. So make sure you have that turned off when you're taking your pictures. Now when we leave the cave, we're going to back up those stairs, across this ramp, and then walk across those two black mats over there. They have soap and water in them. And it cleans off the bottom of your shoes as you walk across. And we have everybody that goes into the cave do this because we have a fungal disease that affects our bats. It's called white nose syndrome. If you're from the East Coast, you've probably most definitely heard about it, although it has spread to pretty much the entire country at this point. It's a fungal disease, only affects bats, so you don't have to worry about it for yourself or your pets back home. But we don't want to take it out of the cave and spread it to any other caves that you may visit afterwards. We've lost close to 90% of some of our bat species here in about 9 years that we've had evidence of white nose in our cave system. So it's a very devastating disease. We don't want to spread it around. If we see any bats today, I'll try and point them out to you all, but we don't want to touch them or harass them in any way, shape, or form. Same goes for any other kind of wildlife we see today in the cave. If a bat were to touch you, let either myself or Kelly know. We'll have some fun paperwork to hand over to you. Have a nice little conversation with you about the potential transmission of rabies. Does that all sound good to you all? All right. Well, if you all are ready, get your tickets out. You're going to show them to Ranger Kelly. She doesn't need to take them. She just needs to see them. And we're going to make our way down into the cave. Perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. And here. Excellent. Excellent.
You want me to bring it for temperature drops 20 degrees.
Oh, I'm glad I brought my sweatshirt.
Hi, how are you?
My Mammoth Passage tour. We're going to make our way on the right-hand side of the trail.
Yeah, it would be funny if everybody got scared.
It's incredible. We're underground in the cave.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lower ceiling than I thought. Yeah, four flashlights. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, flashlight, nothing.
Big handles, lanes.
Yeah. It's all around here and pull it came off.
Was it this big though? Oh my god, this is hard to see. With what? My camera?
Yeah. Hold it down with this.
No, it's okay.
Alrighty, folks. So young John Hopkins would make his way into this narrow passageway that we just walked through, probably using some kind of lantern to light his way. And that lantern would have only given off so much light for him. But if he had had this really cool thing called electricity, then he would have probably been able to see that this narrow passageway would have opened up to reveal the rotunda.
Wow.
So you all can come on in a little bit further here. You can wrap around this railing in the middle.
I'm sorry.
And young John, when he was walking through the cave, sometimes maybe even crawling through here, feeling the dirt, maybe he got really tired, wiped his hand on his brow, wiped his mouth, and tasted a little bit of the dirt. Does anyone here eat dirt? No? Sometimes there's always one. But if you were to taste the dirt here, you would probably taste some saltiness, some bitterness. That's going to indicate that there's some nitrates in the soil. And with this cave being a very dry cave, we don't have a lot of water dripping down on us in this cave. That's going to help make these kind of nitrates thrive in the soil. And it's been known since about the 12th century that if you have a dry cave, you can take these nitrates out of the soil, extract them, and combine them with charcoal and sulfur to create something that was pretty much needed in this area. Remember, they had to hunt for their food. And what do you need to hunt? Gunpowder. So these nitrates, they were made into saltpeter. Saltpeter, if you combine it with charcoal and sulfur, you get black gunpowder. So the people living in this area, they were coming down into this cave now to take out some of these nitrates, make the saltpeter, to then make their black gunpowder, to fend off anyone that they needed to hunt for their families, all of that. So they take out a little bit at a time, and there were other smaller caves in the area that had the same situation. But eventually, we come a time in our country's history where we need a lot of black gunpowder. And we used to be getting it from Great Britain, but now they don't want to send it to us anymore because we've got high tensions with them. So we have to produce it on our own. So they begin, a man with the last name Simmons, he gets a contract with the U.S. government to mass produce the saltpeter area here, make as much as they possibly can. So we have a full-scale mining operation beginning down here in this hole in the ground, fighting for our country's freedoms in the War of 1812, a war that we don't talk about all that often in our daily lives, but its history, part of it is right here in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, underground of it. So you can see here in the middle of the rotunda here, we've got some wooden boxes. And right here in the middle, we've got another one in the corner over there. There used to be one here too. The people working down here would be digging up the cave dirt. They weren't breaking really any rocks or anything. They were just digging up all the dirt, putting it in these boxes. About 12 tons of dirt could fit in one box. They would filter water into this dirt using the water that we passed by at the waterfall. They pipe it in using tulip poplar trees that they made into pipes. Filter the water through the soil, make a slurry at the bottom, then pump that back out of the cave and boil it over large kettle pots that were at the entrance where we first started our journey. They would boil it down. Once all the liquid evaporated, the saltpeter crystals would be left behind. And they would ship it off to the East Coast to a man named E.I. DuPont. factories that made it into the black gunpowder. Those factories are still around today. You may be familiar with that name. But Mammoth Cave is said to produce about 400,000 pounds of saltpeter for the War of 1812. That's going to be about every 3 and 5 bullets shot during the War of 1812. Also during the War of 1812, that's where we get the poem, the Star-Spangled Banner, where it talks about bombs bursting in air. Maybe some of those bombs bursting in air that were inspiring the poet came from Mammoth Cave. Some of that black gunpowder was a result of this operation. But during that same poem, we also talk about how this is the land of the free, and that the people down here, they were working on that freedom, fighting for that freedom, just in a different way, just from underground. But the irony of it is that they would never experience that freedom for themselves as well, because it was enslaved labor that was doing all of this backbreaking work 24/7 to produce as much saltpeter as possible. They were released from farms and plantations further south, brought here to Mammoth Cave, and once the war was over, they were sent back to where they came from. Now, the war ended in about 1815, towards the end of 1815, and the price of saltpeter absolutely plummeted. Some even say it petered out. So, oh yeah. So there's no more money being made here, so they have to find other avenues, because if you've got this kind of place, you want to make money off of it. So what they were digging up in the dirt, they weren't always just finding dirt and rocks. They were finding other things too. Some of those other things we'll see at our next stop, but that's what started increasing the popularity of the cave here too. So this was all left behind just in case they were to enter another war close by. They were able to start up production as soon as possible. It's also way easier to bring things into the cave than to take them back out of the cave too. Any questions about the saltpeter operation here? All right. Well, we're going to keep making our way down this passageway here behind me, which is called Audubon Avenue.
There we go.
Oh my God.
Lights on.
around so that everybody has a chance to see. That story that is going to be back up on the surface, John Houchins following that bear in the cave, being the first one to discover this cave. It's just that, it's a story. We know that it couldn't possibly be true because one, if John Houchins was a true Kentuckian, he would have shot and killed that bear on the first try. And two, there are things left behind in the cave that completely proved otherwise, that he was not the first one in here. Those saltpeter miners were digging up the dirt and they were uncovering things that had been left behind by people that came in the cave about 5,000 years prior. These people, these great prehistoric Native Americans, they were coming into the cave the same way we came into, using that natural entrance, that sinkhole entrance. But their reasoning for it might be similar to ours today. You know, they probably had some curiosity, but they probably had a greater purpose too, because the danger level for them coming into the cave is much higher than it would be for any of us nowadays. They would have been using cane reed torches to light their way into the cave. They collected the cane reed by the Green River, bundled it up, and would light it to find their way through here. They were also coming here with no prior knowledge. They would have been the very first human beings to enter this cave. So no markers or anything, which way to go, which way not to go in these passageways. And they were coming in here, we know, for at least one reason, to take something out. So they were mining a resource of their own. It wasn't going to be saltpeter, because they didn't have as much of a need for it back then. But they were finding a mineral that formed on the limestone rock that makes up the cave, a mineral called gypsum. Is anyone familiar with gypsum? Yeah, we use it in our daily lives for the most part. It can be in drywall. You can find it in plaster of Paris. Even in sensitive toothpaste, you can find gypsum as an ingredient for it. Has anyone ever had a Twinkie before? So a Twinkie. Yeah, that's an ingredient in Twinkies too. So they probably weren't using it for that, but they were taking it out of the cave. They were using it for something that was important enough for them to be risking their lives to come down here and get it. So any evidence of it back up on the surface has been long gone, because this is a water-soluble mineral. So it's been exposed to the elements for long enough that it's just dissolved away. We don't see it anywhere on the surface. But in the cave, we can still find it in some areas. Sometimes we can see where they were chipping away using mussel shells to take it off of the rock. So very important to them, but a mystery to us for what they were using it for. Now, there are some theories, because they also found a sunflower head in the cave, which was definitely placed there. You couldn't grow a sunflower in the cave, but you didn't really grow sunflowers in this area anyway, because they weren't natural here. So they probably traded for these seeds somehow, planted them, but used the gypsum to condition the soil for them. Because these sunflowers, they love gypsum-rich soil. So maybe they're using it as a part of their new agriculture. We know that they were transitioning into a more domesticated agricultural lifestyle as well, because of some other things that were left behind in the cave. So the number one thing that can be found in the cave is the cane reed torches, which makes sense because you need a lot of light to make your way into and back out of the cave. But can anyone guess what the number two thing is that we find the most often in the cave? Bones, not as much. Kind of told you already. It's number two itself. Oh yeah. If you're in the cave, nature calls. So that's the second most found thing, paleofeces. People that get paid a lot more than Kelly and I look at these paleofeces a bit more, and they've been able to put together these people's diets a bit better. They were transitioning from that hunter-gatherer lifestyle into the more domesticated agricultural lifestyle over a few thousand years. It's pretty cool things that we can put together from what these people left behind, whether they intended to or not. But all of this put together, along with the saltpeter mining, starts to put this cave on the map. People start to be curious about what could be going on down here. And not just the stories, but the cave itself. This is a pretty wide open passageway that we've been walking through so far. So people are starting to come from all over to see this cave. And at our next stop, we'll talk a little bit more about what their cave tours would have been like back in the day. So if you all are ready, we're going to make our way further. It's going to be our last stop in the cave. The further we go down, we'll turn around and make another stop. But this is where we get onto that dirt trail, so make sure that you pay attention to where you're stepping, especially when you first get on it. It's a little bit rough, but if you pay attention, you'll be fine. So you all are ready?
Hi, babe. Should have watched where you stepped. You didn't by any chance leave the queue, did you?
I'm fine.
What has
It does need that one too. Oh, that's the largest. Fantastic. Oh, long. Sorry. Yeah. You need help? Is that an antenna? So they can have emergency services down here.
All right. So those early visitors, they were making their way from all over the country to get to the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. And like yourselves, these are the elite of society because they're able to afford to leave their homes and their jobs for an extended period of time, travel all the way here to Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. They were able to afford to stay in the hotel for an extended period of time. These people's day trips to the cave weren't day trips, but they were multiple weeks long. They were continuously just going into the cave, going further and further and further into it. So they were here for months at a time for some of them, away from their homes for that long too. So they definitely were the top professions, the wealthier class that was visiting the cave, especially in the height of tourism in the 1830s. People coming from all over. Now their tours, they would have started up at the hotel and their guide would have handed them something that looked just like this. This is a whale oil lantern here, and I'll even light it up for you all. Now this is more of a modified whale oil lantern because if you're not from Kentucky, you could probably still guess that we don't have many whales here. So they had to find something else to fuel this lantern, some other kind of animal fat. And we've got plenty of that here in Kentucky in the form of fried chicken, bacon, pork chops, ham, anything you can think of. And they would collect all that grease, all that fat from the hotel kitchen in the morning, put it in their lanterns and light them up to find their way through the cave for their tour for the day. So these people would be carrying lanterns just like this. They would have been walking on trails or lack thereof. They were sometimes walking on trails that were really just broken down rock, like you could see back behind you over here. That was their trail, not anything like packed down dirt like what we're on now. Definitely not paved trail that we were just on, but just breakdown, natural breakdown, which could be easy if you have the right shoes. Do you all think they have the right shoes? No. They were high-class society, and they dressed that way too. So the men, when they were visiting the cave, they would usually be wearing three-piece wool suits. They had slick-bottom shoes on made out of leather. Maybe they'd have a cane for them, which would help with some stability if they needed it. The ladies would have been wearing hoop skirts on their dresses. They had 3-inch heeled boots that laced up to their knees. They even had corsets on, too.
I can't breathe.
That would be helpful to get through the really narrow sections. But we know that they dressed this way on their cave tours because just like the prehistoric people, they left some of those things behind. We found broken heels off of paths. We found some of those, the bottoms of shoes and passageways as well. Even corsets abandoned very early on behind very large rocks. So they dressed that way, but that didn't deter them from having a good time in the cave. So they were here to have a sense of adventure, to go somewhere no person had gone before, and that's what their guide would probably try to sell them, that, oh, if you give me a tip, we can go down this passageway. No one's ever gone down that passageway before. So you could give your guide that tip, and they take you down this deep, dark passageway that he took his last group through too. But if you're none the wiser, then you're going to be able to have that really great time down there. Maybe he'd even sell you a candle or a pencil to write your name on the walls. You could use the candle, the smoke of the candle, to dot your name on the walls too. Leave your mark on the cave to say that you've been here. Some of their cave tours, well, they really only had two options. They had the short tour option and they had the long tour option. If you've traveled for 2 weeks to get here, which tour are you going to take?
The long one.
The long tour, yeah, you want to get your money's worth out of it. That's perfectly fine. So if you all are ready for the long tour, it's only going to be about 16 hours long if you're ready for that. If not, you can pick the short tour. It's only going to be about 8 hours long. So for these people, they would have to come into the cave and back out of the cave the same way we did. That was their only known entrance. So they'd eventually have to turn around, find their way back out. And at that turnaround spot, that's basically the end of the earth for them. So they're definitely going to write their name to prove that they made it that far into the cave. So the cave guides, they are able to make tips off of things like that. But also sometimes they're able to explore new passageways on their own too. Especially one cave guide, his name was Stephen Bishop. And with the amount of caving that he did on his off time between cave tours, he actually doubled the known mileage of Mammoth Cave. So before it was about 20 miles, he added about another 20 to it in his time here in the later 1800s. Stephen Bishop, he's actually an enslaved guide. There's some other enslaved guides that worked here too, Matt and Nick Bransford as well. They were released from a man in Nashville, Tennessee to work here for the cave, guiding cave tours. But they would bring people down the same way that we've brought you down today, and this all began in 1816, right shortly after the end of the War of 1812. They didn't make money off of the saltpeter anymore, but people were willing to spend their hard-earned money to come down here in a deep, dark hole in the ground. Yeah, I'm sure you don't relate to that at all. Right? Yeah. So this is going to be our little turnaround area here. We do have a couple of minutes. If you haven't already, you can walk around. There are a couple of different signs. If you'd like to read those signs, you can check out Lookout Mountain over there. It's a big pile of rocks. Or take a big chance to take your pictures. So we'll reconvene in a couple of minutes. So making our way back towards the ride.
Unbelievable. It's mostly black.
I know.
Huh?
Doesn't really show.
Any questions before we move along? Yeah, kind of. So there's definitely a misconception that Caves are always really cold or always Yeah, this time of year we're kind of just getting a little bit back into having a lot of people in the park. The winter time is usually a very, very slow time.
One of the self-guided tours,
Usually in the summertime, we're able to have them more available. Or if we have like a winter holiday weekend,
and on those you just get to wander in and go wherever you want. Or,
Not really. You could pretty much follow what we've done today. So they don't go much further.
the other comments on to see if it's completely different.
You guys have another tour?
15 minutes after
Oh boy.
the domes and drip sound.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Set.
Very, very
Well, we're planning on doing a different tour every day, but we just kind of have a meeting today to combine everything into one day.
Yeah. That's a fun one.
No problem, different.
All right. Any other questions that we thought of along the way?
Well, I noticed when you come off the dirt path, the pavement had a layer of sand on it. Does it flood ever?
Not up here, it won't flood. It's usually
Down
just
there?
like from people kicking up the dirt a little bit more. But about 300 feet below us, there's the water table, and so levels further beneath us can still flood sometimes. Usually in the springtime or the winter time, if we've had a lot of snow that's melted, a lot more precipitation in the springtime, that'll raise the water table up a little bit more to do that. Yeah. All right. Well, so we've covered quite a little bit of Mammoth Cave's history, but we've really barely scratched the surface that the cave holds here. There's so much more that we know about the cave, an infinite amount that we don't know about the cave too. So all these put together, all these people that came ever since 1816, all these visitors, they found something in the cave that they connected to, so much so that they banded together, a group of individuals banded together in the earlier 1900s to ask their legislatures to help make this place a national park. So Mammoth Cave was put into legislation along with Shenandoah National Park and the Great Smoky Mountains National Park to become the East Coast National Parks. They were all out on the West Coast beforehand. So people thought that the cave itself and things up on the surface too were important enough to protect for future generations to come, so that you all were able to come here today and see a little bit of a piece of your nation's history, just a little bit different way of seeing it than you normally would. So in 1941, July 1st, 1941, Mammoth Cave officially became a national park. It was celebrated. They had their big party in 1946 because we had a few other things going on in that time period. Bigger fish to fry. So celebration didn't happen until a little bit further on, but we've been continuing that tradition ever since 1816 of leading people with a little bit of curiosity in their minds into this hole in the ground. And hopefully you all were able to take a little piece, figuratively, of Mammoth Cave with you today. So we're actually going to start heading back out of the cave. We're going to walk across those mats to help save the bats. If you have any further questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them back up on the surface. But before we head out, I just want to thank you all on behalf of myself and Ranger Kelly for coming down here, following two strangers down here today. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day here at Mammoth Cave National Park. Thank you all for coming. Let's go see some sunshine.
Is it over? I think it's going to be cool to do one more before we leave. Do you like it so far? I figured once you were in, it'd be better.
I got cemeteries everywhere. For the fallen comrades.
Parts of that flood still. So on the historic tour, you come through here and you go deeper in the cave.
Yeah, so we went to the right, and there is kind of areas on the right to the left. So eventually we come up, back out of the cave, sides where there's artifacts around the You take a bus for that tour. You'll see it's about a 3-mile drive further away at a place called the U Entrance.
Oh, I know, that's what I mean. That was.
Close. Pretty close. I know how I feel most of the time.
Now we have to go up the stairs.
The next one has more.
No.
No more stuff.
Oh, no, yeah, that's something I'm carrying with me. You'll see that again, too. That is what they call a tree plant. A tree planter, once upon a time.
Definitely go look in the bathroom if you have to. All right, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We gotta go back up.
Yeah.
Eat something quick.
What's the next time? Is it 1:30?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a half hour.